Hey, welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Should you buy for negative cash flow, thinking that these surging rents are soon going to make up the gap? Bidding wars are easing in the property price market, an opportunity for you and I to meet in person, then an actionable resource on how you can tie up cash flowing brand new construction rental property in one of the hottest growth markets in America, today on Get Rich Education. You can get a 50-year-old house somewhere or buy a new one directly from the builder with tenant-resilient amenities already built in. With over 3,000 Florida units at different construction stages, they are exclusively for investors. President Wagner and Alaska and team also invest strongly in their own product. That's belief. Start at buildtorentdirect.com. That's build the number 2 rentdirect.com or text 407-927-5074. Hey, is your IRA in a real estate syndication? Yikes, a 37% UBIT tax could hit you, but you still have a chance to set up your EQRP and avoid this. Did you make too much money in 2020 and need more deductions? Now federal law lets you set up an EQRP in 2021 and get deductions for last year, retroactively. Even put old IRA and 401k money in Bitcoin, gold, or your own business. Get control of all of your retirement money, tax and penalty free. Text EQRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Klamath, California to Klamath Falls, Oregon, and across 188 nations worldwide. This is Get Rich Education. Not as much geographic difference between those two places as we usually have here, is there? I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. You probably know that by now. With the new space race for residential real estate, like I talked about last week, where first there were price bidding wars for homes, and now add to that rental bidding wars too, does this mean that everything is just different now and that you don't need to buy for cash flow anymore? Does this change that core fundamental value set of avoiding speculation and being a true investor? Does it? So let's say that you consider buying a property with a rent income of $1,500 and your monthly mortgage and operating expenses come in at $1,800. Well, that's cash flow of negative $300. You are hemorrhaging cash there. But is that attractive now? Because you reason that you'll just make it up on the capital appreciation, plus with rents rising, say, 15% or more in some markets now, what do you just rationalize that pretty soon your property is going to break even monthly, and then it's going to go on to provide that positive monthly cash flow? Can you just ignore fundamentals? I have got a firm and emphatic answer for you there, and that answer is no. No genteelism there. No euphemism there. You can do what you will, but I don't buy for negative cash flow. Now, could you do that and get away with it? Yeah, maybe, even probably. But you're starting to get away from being an investor and now trending towards speculation. Look, just imagine this. As hard as it might be to conceive of this now, okay, with the real estate race for space on and the durable nature of the paltry housing supply condition in America right now, yes, it is pretty hard to imagine property prices falling. I get that. But just say that they did. All right, then what if you had both a falling property price and the same time that's happening, you're feeding it $300 per month as it drops in value? I want you to consider that situation before you buy for negative cash flow. How would that feel for you? Yes, some people just want to get dollars placed. They might be printing so many dollars right now that you don't even know where to put them before they lose purchasing power. Last week, the CPI came in at 5.3%, the PPI at 8.3%. Those are two big inflation indicators. Yes, with even a loss in property value and a negative cash flow, you very well may still benefit from real estate's other three profit centers, your ROA, taxes, and inflation profiting on the debt. I don't think that property value loss is something that you need to be too concerned with at this time, because we do have those three fundamental value drivers working in real estate's favor: scarcity, utility, and demand. But it's at least worth asking yourself that question. If values did go down, how would you feel about negative cash flow then? Now, with rents increasing handsomely in America today, 10%, 15%, even 20%, in some markets, you know what? Your tenant, they are often feeling lucky just to have a place to live. And, it's pretty likely that if your rental unit needed repairs, like a leaky faucet or some loose tub surround tile or a window that won't open, don't postpone repairs. See, in an environment like this, you probably could postpone repairs. It's less likely that you have to maintain your property because your tenant might have nowhere else to go in this tight market. They've got no alternative in a lot of markets. But that's not why you're in this. You're in this to provide good, sound housing for others, although that might be secondary. Yes, you're predominantly in this to be profitable, but you want to like yourself and you want to like what you're doing and what you're providing to the world. So being timely about repairs, this gives landlords' much maligned reputation a glow up as well. You'll remember when 2 months ago here, I did that show about how the media and others often stigmatize and vilify landlords. Well, this is your chance to do your part and be sure that this does not happen. Never get called a slumlord. And besides, deferred maintenance, that often comes back to bite you anyway. But yeah, residential renter property owners like you are in the driver's seat in America right now. This is the place to be. Moratoriums are largely ended, hopefully for good this time. Prices are up. Rents are up. Occupancy is up. Mortgage interest rates are down. So buy for cash flow and treat tenants the way that you would want to be treated. That's some golden rule stuff right there. Now, low inventory, that has meant multiple offer situations on properties for a while, driving up the price. And then you can have an appraisal issue because the appraisal comes in low because those comps often lag behind sharply appreciating prices. So these bidding wars and escalated prices are good for you, but they're not 100% beneficial to you. But we continue to see the turning of a corner here now because price bidding wars are subsiding in America today. They now appear to have peaked about 4 or 5 months ago, depending on the market. In fact, to summarize a number of interviews with agents today in the media, I think this line was the most symbolic, the most representative of what's going on, when an Orlando-based Redfin real estate agent just said, quote, instead of 25 to 30 offers on homes, we're now seeing 5 to 7. That's the end of the quote. I really think that sums it up. Yeah, like I said a while ago, and this is obvious, this torrid pace of price appreciation. And by the way, let's not confuse rent growth with price appreciation. I am intermittently talking about each one of these things here in this chat so far today. This torrid pace of price appreciation, like 20% or more, will have an affordability constraint at some point. Now, let's look at the active listing count of single-family homes and condos. This is a real barometer, and to be consistent, this is the same set of numbers that I've been citing to you for many months here. Now, remember, over the past several years, the normal availability has been 1 to 1.5 million active listings. We're talking about for sale units that are available nationally. Back in April, we hit that jaw-droppingly low trough, like this low trough that was below the ocean floor when there were only 491,000 units available. I just told you the norm is 1 to 1.5 million. Well, we have come up out of that trough, but really not by all that much. Now up to 640,000 in August. And understand that we're also getting into a seasonal slowdown time of year now as well. So we're only at about half of the normal supply. And again, this is for single-family homes, condos, and townhomes nationally. So sellers still have the upper hand. Now, interestingly, Freddie Mac was summarizing some Census Bureau numbers. Over the past 40 years, sole person households have doubled in the United States, from 18 million up to 36 million. Yeah, so we're talking about more people living alone. The number of sole person households, homes with just one person living in them, that's what's doubled since 1980. Now, this is important to real estate investors because sole person households, well, in general, those people are going to live in smaller and more affordable homes than, say, a typical homeowner would with multiple people in the household. Now, this doubling of households, this was the headline, but that was not completely satisfying to me. And why? Well, okay, sole person households doubled since 1980, but look, our overall population in America has also increased since 1980. So proportionally, are there really more sole person households? More, I guess, bachelor and bachelorette households over the last 40 years? Well, I had to do some more digging, and the best that I could find from the same source is that in the 1990s decade, the number of households that were sole person was 33%, and today, or at least in this past decade, it has risen from 33% up to today's 44%. So the translation is there is more demand today for smaller homes, and that's often what you are looking for because that's what makes sense for you as a rental property investor. That's where the numbers work, usually properties under 2,000 square feet. There is more demand then for the product that you are providing due to this greater proportion of sole person households. And hey, no wonder then that you're able to raise the rent. Hey, let's meet up. I am going to be returning to the New Orleans Investment Conference next month. Yes, it is October 19th to 22nd in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's a rather prestigious event. In fact, it is not only the longest running investment event in America, but the entire world. And besides you and I getting to meet there informally, it's probably an event that you would want to attend anyway. If you don't know about it, it will be my 4th time there. And some of the speakers at the event include guests that you've heard on this show with me here in New Orleans. See Ron Paul, Peter Schiff, Jim Rickards, Danielle DiMartino Booth, Doug Casey, George Gammon, Brian London, and more people like the real estate guys, Robert Helms and Russell Gray. Now, understand, though, that it's not a real estate conference per se. It's actually founded on a legacy of gold investing, and you'll still see a strong presence of that there. Though I've never felt any particular political pulls there, it does attract sort of, I would call it an anti-fiat currency crowd. So you'll learn about real estate, natural resource extraction, cryptocurrency, and more, even stocks. An awful lot of economists critiquing the Fed there, to put it gently. Learn more about the New Orleans Investment Conference. Again, it's October 19th to 22nd. Do that at getricheducation.com/events. I do not expect to be speaking there myself. I did make a somewhat short notice decision to attend here with less than a month until the conference kicks off, so I probably won't try to strong arm the promoter into giving me a speaking spot. It'll be a good chance to catch up with people for me and do some learning myself and see how a live event is run in the pandemic era before deciding when to fire up GRE in-person events again here ourselves. So consider joining me in New Orleans. Our own Andrea Newbern that runs operations here is going to attend as well, so you'll get to meet her too. And hey, she's the one that props up my Slackjot operation here. But it's a conference that you want to attend anyway. Lots of learning from today's foremost thought leaders on economics and investing. Coming up shortly on the show today, you love the up to 5 ways that real estate pays and GRE's inflation triple crown in this high inflation environment. A great guest is going to give you an actionable way to do that because he's an experienced provider of brand new construction investment property. But first, as far as the New Orleans Investment Conference goes, sign up now through the event link at getricheducation.com/events. I have always had a great time in New Orleans. I attended in 2014, 2017, and 2018, and I will again, hopefully with you. When you sign up on our events page, I love that because that way the event sees that we helped bring you there, and then they do some nice things for us. It is the longest running investment conference in the world with all the speakers that finance geeks idolize. I'll see you there. Start at getricheducation.com/events. More next. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They've provided GRE listeners with more loans than anyone, and it's where I got my last few loans. They finance single-family income property up to 4plexes. They're the number one lender for beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and get your custom plan for expanding your cash-flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. You know, a lot of investors choose either cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market could provide both: Jacksonville, Florida. They've got 27% lower home prices and higher rents than the national median. Their market has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets over the last 30 years. Get positive cash flow today and above average appreciation for tomorrow. They often have available inventory in Jacksonville, if you can believe that. Start at cashflowandgrowth.com.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Tom Wheelwright. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Chris Funk is back on the show to talk about real estate industry trends because he founded one of America's top, highest volume build-to-rent, meaning new construction, investment property providers in America, Southern Impression Homes. Chris, it's been 8 or 9 months since you were last here, and the industry sure has been changing. Welcome back onto the show.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you having me back.
Chris also offers some of the best, most competitive prices to real estate investors at his company there, offering new construction product only. Chris, I think it makes the most sense to talk about geography because you offer properties in a wider geography than a lot of providers do. So tell us about that.
We started here in Jacksonville, Florida, and we've spread out to Palm Coast, Ocala, Citrus Springs, Inverness, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, Inglewood, and then also Union City, Fairburn area, which is southwest of Atlanta. So the vast majority of the markets that we're in are Florida markets, but you can't hardly beat Atlanta. So we're up there as well.
Yes, and for those that don't know the geography, some of those markets are rather inland and others are pretty close to the coast, which always blows away Californians, that you can get new construction homes in the 200s, sometimes even proximus to a coast, and that's really remarkable. Kind of starting at the beginning, Chris, when you buy raw land to develop on, do you buy one big tract or do you go around and look for what some call infill lots, or I've even heard some people call them spot lots? What do you look for there?
We actually do both. Our business model is about 50% each. So the spot lots that you're talking about, we have some of those in Palm Coast, Ocala, Citrus, Inverness, all throughout Southwest Florida is where we find that spot lot inventory where there's still lots available that we can buy on the ground. We'll build a house or a duplex that's mixed in with a bunch of other houses that were built at various other times. You know, a lot of them were built between 2000 and 2008 and then no more. In Jacksonville, it's very difficult to find spot lots here in Jacksonville or scattered infill lots. They're almost non-existent. So in Jacksonville, we have to develop all of our product. And by develop, I mean, we go find that big piece of land, we get it zoned properly, we get it engineered, and then we put in all the roads, all the sewer, all the water, all the electrical. And then once we get that done, then we're able to go build a house on it.
Right, because a lot is not a lot is not a lot. There are finished lots or lots that aren't finished. And we're talking about a finished lot. We're talking about some of those things that are done like surveying and grading and utilities being brought to curb and bringing in streets if it's a vast tract.
Exactly.
Are there pros and cons for an investor there? Sometimes with an infill lot, a person thinks, well, I already know what's kind of built up and grown around me. But then with big, wide open tracts, the whole area and the whole neighborhood is new. And people like that too.
It really, to each their own. They both have their pros and cons. The nice thing about the infill lots is they're there today. So if we buy an infill lot, we can typically start building on it immediately. Now, there may be some trees grown on it that we need to clear off, and we may need to bring fill in, or, there may be some lot cleanup that we need to do, but there's a road out front. And so in general, we can start that faster. From a development standpoint, it could take us 2 years to get from the point that we find a piece of property until we have a road in place, because you have to go through all the government approval process. Somebody says, hey, I really want to be in a subdivision community, and they really pick one that they like, it could be a longer wait to get there. That's kind of the negative side of new development community.
Now, developers have their own niches and get their own personalities and kind of what I like to call their USP, their unique selling proposition. And since you're building new construction and these properties typically don't go to owner occupants, are there any particular things that you do there that really cater to a good outcome that way?
Our whole business model is set up for investors. We don't sell to the general home buying population at all. And so our product is built with tenants and investors in mind, meaning that our product is designed to be a low cost of ownership for the owner, but also be aesthetically pleasing for the tenant so that it rents fast. And by that, I mean that on the interior of the property, the countertops and the kitchens and the baths are all granite. It's one of those things that you see the countertops with the laminate on top of them. People use those as a cutting board, and within a year or two, they look really bad. And same in the bathrooms. If curling iron gets laid on a laminate countertop, it burns and it looks bad. And so after a year or two, your new home doesn't look new anymore. But with these hard surfaces, those counters look new forever. In addition to that, we put undermount sinks in there. It's a negligible cost difference to traditional sink, but it looks so much better for the tenants. They love the look of that. We do the stainless appliances in the kitchen. So again, it's just one of those things. It's easy to take care of, but it's also aesthetically pleasing to the tenant. And then the biggest thing of all is the vinyl plank floors. So we do the vinyl plank floors throughout the entire home. So it looks like a wood floor, but it's vinyl, and it's super easy to take care of. It's easy for the tenants to take care of, and it looks beautiful, so they love it. Landlords love it because when a tenant moves out, they're not having to replace carpet. Being that we own a property management company as well, we know that the biggest item of expense to an owner on a turn is if they have carpeting. It's either going to need to be replaced or cleaned, and if it's cleaned, it's never quite the same. You can never quite get that smell out of the carpet once it's gone downhill. So these homes are built to where they never have to worry about that.
Few things are less appetizing to a prospective new tenant than obviously used carpet. And I do want to ask you more about those materials in just a moment, Chris. But first, dropping back, since you do have to balance investor appetite with what tenants are looking for, let's talk about that product type. Single family homes, duplexes, larger. What are you doing there?
We build a variety of products. So we build townhomes, we build single family homes, we build duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and coming soon, now probably not for another 6 or 9 months, we're going to have some small multifamily, which will be 6 units, 9 units, and 13 unit buildings.
So you work in a lot of different geographies, and you have quite a few different product types as well. But interestingly, you can't just snap your fingers and create these things. And, a lot of people come to me and think that, well, there must be so many residential homes selling right now that in transactions I see taking place. But oftentimes I tell them, no, it's difficult to bring the supply onto market. So there's really not that much movement historically. Of course, you're still moving product, though, because you have found that you are able to deal with not just higher material costs, but sometimes the disruptions. I know I was talking to you earlier, and you found that some builders just can't get materials at all, but you are. So just tell us about how you're dealing with some of that, Chris. All those materials that it takes to go ahead and make these properties appear, from sinks to lumber to drywall to doorknobs to hinges to cabinets. You need to make all this happen. So tell us about that, because that's really a substantial part of the industry that's changed since what we all know started about 18 months ago.
Very true. And I'll tell you, it really got bad over the last 9 months. It was funny. You mentioned that I was on here 9 months ago, and I was thinking, wow, it's been a tough 9 months since the last time I was on the show.
You've aged 3 years. Yeah.
It's true. I think maybe more, maybe more. The availability of materials has never been so difficult. We're in constant contact with our suppliers, whether it be the truss manufacturers, the window manufacturers, the garage door manufacturers. They're all on some form of allocation or another. What does allocation mean? That means that they can't supply all of their clients, and they have to go to each client and say, this is how many units of whatever widget it is that I can provide to you. And we're finding that across the board. And fortunately, we have a large enough footprint and we're a large enough customer to our suppliers that we're on the list of people that are getting product. A lot of the smaller builders out there just aren't getting it. They are just not able to get their suppliers to give them materials. Right now, trusses are the biggest issue that we're seeing in the market, and we're having to go as far away as 3 hours from the build site to find truss manufacturers to build trusses for us to keep up with our volume. And that's with us getting a lion's share of trusses out of our existing suppliers. So it's very difficult, but in this instance, size does matter, and it's certainly helped us stay at the front of the line for materials.
Okay, so trusses have been a nascent problem. That's a product typically made of lumber. It's that triangular shaped piece that helps frame in a roof, something that one really can't so much do without when it comes to home building there. Chris, I think this is such an important time to have a discussion like this, and therefore it's important for investors to leverage the economies of scale of a big provider. And maybe this tilts in some instances more toward new construction than existing construction, because I talked to a number of investors that are a bit concerned about buying property that has been partially renovated, or that they need to go renovate themselves before they put it in their portfolio, because they're pretty leery of maintenance costs and repair costs and CapEx costs not just being volatile, but again, like we said, them being able to get the product at all.
You know this from my background. We started in the renovation space back in 2010. We renovated homes, leased them for a number of years. And then around 2014 and 2015, it became apparent that two things were happening. One is the inventory was going away. The foreclosure inventory was going away, which was how we were supplying inventory for our business model. But two is the cost of it was going through the roof. It got to be that divergence where it was actually cheaper for us to build a new home than it was to take all the risk buying an older home where, you can go in and do all the renovation budgets you want. But when you start tearing into a wall, and then that leads to another wall, and that leads to another wall, your budgets were shot more often than not on a renovation of an older home. We transitioned in that 2014-15 timeframe to new construction, and we really never looked back. And that's primarily because of the feedback that we've gotten from our clients. So the maintenance cost is so much lower on new construction, almost non-existent, because it's a brand new home. There's nothing to go wrong. The turn costs are much lower because of the way that we're designing the properties. We're not saying, well, hey, you know what? We're going to live with the old materials that are in here because we're over budget on a property. No, we're going in with brand new materials that are built the way that we want to keep that maintenance and turn costs low. On top of that, from an exterior standpoint of the homes, all of our homes have a cement siding. So it's either a cement board or it's block with stucco over the block. These things are really built to last, as opposed to the old T111 that was basically particle board on the exterior of the home, which always led to WDO issues. For all of these reasons, there's a much lower cost of maintenance on these properties. But the thing that's often missed is the lower cost of insurance on these properties. The insurance companies are well aware of what their risks are. They've got actuaries out there that are crunching these numbers day in and day out. And they realize that, hey, a new construction home built to new codes and built to the new standards is going to hold up much better than a home built in 1950s under older codes. The insurance rates are significantly lower on new construction product than older construction. So all of these little pieces to the puzzle end up leading to a lower cost of ownership for new construction. And at the end of the day, obviously, a higher profit margin for the investor.
low mortgage rates and low insurance premiums on this new construction product is something that needs to be factored in when an investor just looks at that, what I'd call the top line ratio of rent income to purchase price, because those other two things aren't exhibited within that. And yet you sure have seen a cycle, Chris. I mean, back in 2010, the market was so different. We're coming off the global financial crisis where you go ahead and buy a property for less than replacement cost. But that flip-flopped maybe 4 or 5 years later, like you're talking about 2014, 2015, and then it began to make sense for new construction. And of course, it isn't just the investors that like the new construction because they don't have the repair and the maintenance costs. It's the tenants that like that, and you get longer stays as well. But of course, building new construction in today's environment with this lower supply, it does take a relatively patient dollar for that investor. They can't just close on a property in 60 days. Sometimes it still needs to be built.
That's absolutely true. That's probably the biggest downside to our business model, Keith, is that we have to actually build it. In today's world, every segment of the real estate and home building market is really under a lot of stress. So that starts when you go to get your permit. So to get a permit, you have to get a surveyor out there to survey and stake out where that house is going to go on a building pad. And surveyors are in short supply at the moment as well, where surveys we used to be able to get in a week or two are now taking 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks in some markets. And we're really having to pay a lot to get those surveyors out there because they're in such demands. Well, then that trickles into the building department. So the building departments are overwhelmed. They're working actually 7 days a week. I got to give them props. It's amazing how many times we're getting permits on a Saturday and Sunday because they're working overtime to try and get the permit backlog caught up. Just the permitting process alone, which used to take 2 months, we're now getting it down to maybe a 4-month period. But during the pandemic, there were some permits that were 8, 9, 10 months because nobody at the permitting departments were even working on them. That time frame has really come down, but it's still much higher than it ever used to be. Then you've got all your other supply issues, like we mentioned, trusses. We're actually having to order trusses before we even have a building permit because some of the truss manufacturers are as far as 30 weeks out on trusses right now. All of this leads to relatively lengthy build times. Right now, our clients that are signing a contract today, they may not close on that home for 12 to 14 months, depending on where that property is and where it falls in the queue of supply and material availability.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about a patient dollar. If this sounds of interest to you, go to getricheducation.com/Southeast. Yes, such a wide geography is worked in here that we're not using a city name or a state name to connect you with that provider report and provider contact information. That's getricheducation.com/Southeast. Chris, with this patient dollar, like we're talking about, sometimes that prompts the question in a more experienced investor's mind. Now, wait, do I have to then go ahead and fund a construction loan and then close out that loan and convert that over to a purchase loan when I'm about time to close? Or can I just go right in with the purchase loan? How does that work?
Well, that on the flip side is one of the strongest aspects of our business model is that when a client signs a contract with us, they put down a 10% deposit. And that's all they have to put down until that house is done. So we fund the remaining 90% of that home build, and the buyer does not have to close on that property until we have a CO, which is certificate of occupancy, meaning that the local municipality has signed off that that home is built and complete.
That's good news. That's what one wants to hear. Talk to us, if you would, just briefly about the property management. People wonder about leases and tenancies, especially with these new construction products where you could land a tenant where in a new construction home, it feels like their own. They might not want to leave for 3 years. So tell us more about that management that you have in-house there to make it a turnkey experience for that investor.
That's really key to it. You can buy a great property, but if you can't lease it up and if you can't keep a tenant in place, it still won't be profitable. That's really a component of our business model where we try to provide that full solution for our clients. So we have a in-house leasing and management team. In total, our operation is well over 120 employees right now. And a big portion of that is on the management side of the organization. The tenants are really coming from all over the place right now. Florida has always been a growth market, but since the COVID pandemic began, more and more people have been fleeing to Florida from other states for various reasons. People are able to work from home and work remotely. And so they don't need to be in a state where they don't really want to live. They can live where they want to live and still telecommute and Zoom commute into work every day. We're also seeing people that are fleeing for financial reasons. We have a very favorable tax system here in Florida. So we have no state income tax. And still, even with that, a relatively low property tax. So from a taxation standpoint, it's a great place to live. From a business standpoint, it's a very business-friendly state as well. So we see people coming in droves to Florida, which has been really nice from a lease-up standpoint. We've been able to put some upward pressure on rents. So we've seen some major rent growth in all of our markets over the last 12 months. And again, it's like anything else. It's supply and demand. There's not enough houses being put on the ground in Florida right now. And honestly, from the research that we're seeing, it doesn't look like there is going to be supply equilibrium anytime in the near future. So we're going to be at a housing deficit here in Florida for quite some time.
Whether you look at Census Bureau data or U-Haul truck migration data, all signs continue to point to Florida. And yeah, there does continue to be this seemingly everything shortage as the world has operated for years on really a just-in-time supply chain delivery system. Chris, are there any last things that you want to let us know about industry changes or build to rent overall in America and especially the Southeastern United States today?
I think we covered a lot of the points here, Keith. The simple fact is that we believe in build to rent. We invest in build to rent ourselves. We, as they say, eat our own cooking. We're heavily invested in everything that we're supplying to our clients as well. So we have a vested interest in both the building side of our business, the property management side of our business, to make sure that our incentives are aligned with our clients' incentives.
And Chris, you've been providing value to our followers for a while now. It's been great catching up with what's been going on in the build-to-rent industry. It's been great having you back on the show.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate the time.
Oh yeah, the patience of home builders today. Now, some good news for investors came in just last Tuesday as the Treasury Department and the FHFA announced that they are suspending certain requirements that were added in January that had restricted its acquisition of loans secured by second homes and investment properties to just 7% of its total single-family acquisitions and applied stricter underwriting to those loans. So those requirements are being eased now. So it ought to open up more funding avenues for you. When today's guest, Chris, was here with us on the show between 8 and 9 months ago, he talked about how with many of their lots, they essentially cut out the middleman developer who often marks up the lot before they sell it to a home builder because Chris's company is both the developer and the builder themselves. So they're able to save on costs there and pass that on to you. And that's why so many GRE listeners have gotten started with him this year. They operate in North Florida, Southwest Florida, and Greater Atlanta, Georgia, too. Basically, many of the places where everyone seems to be moving. Rather than merely wondering how much longer new build prices in the 200Ks can last, they're in the path of progress. Get the report and connect with the provider at getricheducation.com/southeast. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.